All right, welcome back to the Art for O.U.R. YouTube channel. This is Dan Preece here, slightly crazy host. I've got an awesome brother named Aaron that takes my kids and I up backpacking in the Uintas, or not the Uintas, the Wind Rivers, once a year, and we've seen some amazing sights. Beautiful area up there. This is in Wyoming. And if you get out on a really rocky trail where the paths disappear, you'll run into Cairns. I believe that's how you pronounce it. Just piles of rocks. And I think there's a whole system where you can point people in the right direction on these rocks. Anyway, they're pretty cool. They kind of help you along the way, along a path. So that was the inspiration for this piece. There was a time when I was a kid, did a scout camp. It's kind of a high adventure camp, so it wasn't really a real scout camp, but we were out fishing. And I don't remember if we were in the Uintas or the Wind Rivers, some mountain range. I was pretty young. And a bunch of us ran up to a lake away from our campsite. And then, like teenage boys normally do, we started running back, and we all got split up. And I could not find the trail. I got separated. And what saved my bacon was I started seeing these cairns along the way, and I found my way back. I know of a scout that actually died in a situation like that. He got lost and was never found, so it's something that's near and dear to my heart. It's a clever thing that's been around, I'm sure, for millennia. And anyway, for some reason, that design popped into my head for this, so there you are. This is a piece of willowood. I mentioned before that we had a huge willow tree get rotten and die in our yard. And I chopped it up and saved a whole bunch of it. And it's kind of punky, somewhat rotten wood, which gives it some really interesting color and grain. Because I'm putting it in resin, submerging it in resin, I'm not too worried about its stability. Anyway, I knew on this piece that I was going to destroy most of it, so I picked a rather ugly piece of wood and went for it. At Art for O.U.R, we've got a pretty good collection of art. Right now, we've actually got a lot of the painting and drawing and some of the woodworking at a booth at the Utah Art Market. It's in Salt Lake City, at the Foothill Village on Foothill Drive. If you look at utahartmarket.com, you can find it's up for another week. Ends just before Valentine's Day, so if you want to see some of this stuff in person, and hopefully buy something, you can go there. It's an opportunity. We're always looking for new artists, more work, unique work. We're always looking for people to buy the work. We take donations. You can buy merchandise such as t-shirts and hats and stuff. All of it goes towards named Operation Underground Railroad, started by Tim Ballard. Just an awesome group. They've free kids from essential modern day slavery. I think they've cracked they're getting close to 5,000 kids so far. They've saved, and over 2,000 perpetrators have been arrested. It's just an awesome group, digging into the deepest, darkest corner of our society and trying to make things right for a few kids. So your support is awesome and appreciated. So the truth is, with this project, my initial vision was a stream lined with stones. So I'm trying to make a stream bed contour with this piece. And then I was going to put these plastic rocks along it and kind of line it like you would see in a stream. My initial vision quickly morphed into kind of cairn-looking things. I'm not sure if that's what I shot for initially, or if I realized that's what I was doing and then later named it. Who knows? But to my surprise, These shiny plastic rocks barely stick with super glue. This is Star Bond medium super glue. You can get a discount on that. They're one of my sponsors. There's a code in the description. I think it's Preece 15. There's also a code for resin with Total Boat. If you use the password Preece, you can get a discount there. Anyway, I'm not being shy with this super glue, and man, I don't know if it was the cold temperatures in my garage. I live in Utah, and it's pretty chilly, or what, but usually I can stick anything to anything with this super glue. This stuff, this was tricky. If I ever do this again, I'm going to have to rough up the rock somehow to get a better grip. You'll see in the final project I lost a few. There's a couple of gaps where there were rocks before, and it wasn't actually too bad, but it haunted me the whole time. Every time I bumped the project, I had to re-glue things, and so that was an adventure. This project also reminded me of the black black goo alien thing that Spider-Man fights. I think it's the thing that took over Venom or made Venom. Kind of had a Tim Burton feel to it, but at the end, I liked how it turned out, and I'm not above the abstract. So I have really liked this process of getting rid of bubbles. Um, Step one is to put the project in a container, fill it full of resin, and put it in a vacuum chamber. This is a 5-gallon bucket, so I got a big old vacuum chamber. It's a 15-gallon one. And the idea is that as you drop the pressure, you remove air from the wood and air from the resin. This is my favorite resin, Thickset Fathom. It's a deep pouring resin by Total Boat. They are a sponsor, but it's also a very good resin. You can get up to 3 inches deep with it without any cracking or overheating, as long as your ambient temperature isn't too hot. Anyway, so I run it through the pressure or the vacuum chamber for about an hour. In this case, I couldn't let it bubble up like I normally do because it was such a big project. It's one of the biggest ones I've done. And it turns out it worked out okay. If you can degas it for an hour, it gets enough resin to settle into the wood where the air used to be that you don't get bubbles coming out of the wood. So this saves you the step of having to seal the wood or coat it in anything. And you get rid of the micro bubbles in the resin and kind of degas it. Then I put the whole thing in a pressure pot for as long as it needs to set. And it was kind of chilly in my garage, like I mentioned, so it sat for 4 or 5 days. Usually it takes 24 to 36 hours with this one, but it was fine. I had lots of things I was working on, and if you look close, I have finally solved the bubble problem. There isn't a single bubble in this thing. I was very happy with that. Because it does displace air in the wood, it kind of acts like a stain, soaks into the wood, and it gives it some color. And sometimes if the wood's soft, or like this willow wood, you get streaking where it found soft channels it went into, which gives it a cool look. Certainly competes with the grain of the wood, so it's not always the best thing. But the harder woods, it acts more like just a thin stain, and it's, it doesn't change the color too much, and actually accentuates the grain. So this process works better for harder wood. One of my favorite things about doing resin is you can make your own silly string. I don't mind that at all. with it being so cold in my garage, it actually is pretty warm coming off there. So big blanket of silly string doesn't suck when it's cold. My other sponsor is Laguna Lathes. They make other power tools, but this is the 1836 Revo. It's a workhorse. Usually gets the job done for whatever I'm doing. If I were to buy another lathe, I'd buy the 220 volt version, which has a bit more horsepower to it. But I've liked it, and this is a very heavy piece. That was a lot of resin I put in there. Finished, it probably weighs 10 to 15 pounds. So you can imagine how much weight was swinging around here with this. At this stage, I was getting a little worried that the rocks were going to come out, and so I started super gluing them. Turns out they weren't as loose as I thought they were, but that was just kind of a precautionary thing. I didn't want rocks coming at my head. At some point in the future, I'm going to invest in one of those advanced, fancy turning helmets that's got a respirator built in. But meanwhile, I just put 10,000 things on my head to meet all my needs. I've got some. I'm always listening to music or some books on tape when I work. This is usually my late night stress relieving activity, and I've gotten a great education by a lot of amazing authors out there. A lot of great books on tape. One challenge with these really big pieces, this ended up being about 12 inches tall, probably 10 inches deep. So I have to trade out my tool rest to be able to get in there deeply, safely. Because this wood is on the softer side, it was easy enough to use this deeper tool rest and a carbide tipped tool. I do have a mechanical arm hollowing kit, but I was able to get in here and I felt safe enough, so I stuck with it for this project. But that's a third-party tool rest that I bought, I believe, on Amazon, just so I could get in there in the very deep corners. I find that working inside deep bowls like this, carbide tips are by far better and faster and safer. So I stick a light on the side of the bowl because there's a very, very narrow margin of error here. These small rocks are only a quarter of an inch thick. The bigger ones are maybe half-inch thick, but if you come busting through the wood, they're sitting right on that wood layer. So for one thing, the project has to be perfectly centered on the tenon. Can't be off-center at all, otherwise you'll lose one side of the project. And then you can't afford to go through the resin really fast and be doing a lot of chipping and that and breaking. So as soon as I like to put the light there so you can see light coming through. And as soon as I break through, I usually switch to my smaller negative rake carbide tip that takes a lot less wood, and so I can just feather it in there until I get what I want off. Once I had the inside done, I started working on the outside again. I realized I had a pretty thick wall, and I wanted to get closer to the rocks so you could see them better without damaging them. So I went back. That's why I went back and did some more shaping of the overall bowl, and I was pretty happy with it. A little tricky doing an hourglass shaped project. That means when you're inside, you got to go narrow and then wide again, and really deep in there. And because it was a big wide one, it wasn't too big of a deal. But that's one reason why I said I left this thing so big, is I wanted to make sure I had plenty of room to work in there. And now that I've got a feel for it, I could have made it half as big and probably been just fine. But as I've mentioned before, I love innovation. I love trying different things. And I rarely revisit the same type of project again, which means I've learned a lot of things that I don't apply again. But you always pick up something that applies to the next project, and that's one thing that keeps me going. I love the new idea. There's something really fun and intoxicating about finding a new theme, a new idea that's I haven't seen before. Anyway, that's what gets me going. I love this hobby. Appreciate everybody's support. Drop us a subscription. It helps us raise money for child trafficking, fighting child trafficking around the world. And hope you have a great week. We'll see you in the next one. Thanks a lot.